My daughter thought I wouldn't notice when she carefully placed something wrapped in velvet cloth deep inside my antique mahogany desk. But 35 years as a chartered accountant in Calgary had taught me to spot discrepancies, and the way Melissa's hands trembled as she closed the drawer told me everything I needed to know. When I opened that drawer 3 hours later, what I found didn't just shock me, it made me realize my own daughter was willing to destroy me to save herself. She had no idea what was coming. This story will show you exactly how a father's love became a fight for survival. But first, what would you do if your own child tried to frame you for a crime you didn't commit? Write it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to hear the whole story. The October morning sun filtered through the windows of my home office in Calgary's Altadore neighborhood as I prepared for my weekly ritual of organizing estate documents. At 64, these quiet Saturday mornings had become my sanctuary since losing Patricia 18 months ago to pancreatic cancer. I was sorting through insurance papers when Melissa appeared in the doorway. Something about her posture immediately set off alarms. Her shoulders were rigid, her smile too bright, like someone forcing themselves to appear relaxed while their insides churned with anxiety. I'd spent 3.5 decades reading body language in boardroom negotiations and fraud investigations. "Morning, Dad," she said, her voice carrying that artificial cheerfulness that parents learn to recognize. "Working on Mom's estate stuff?" I nodded, watching her eyes dart to my desk, then away, then back again. "Just organizing the jewelry appraisal documents. The insurance company needs updated valuations." Melissa moved closer, and every instinct I'd honed over decades of financial investigations screamed that something was wrong. Her breathing was shallow, and despite the cool autumn air, a thin sheen of perspiration covered her forehead. "Mind if I take a look?" she asked, already reaching for the desk before I could respond. "I've been thinking about Mom's jewelry collection. It must be worth a lot." I stepped back, giving her space, but watching carefully. Her right hand moved with practiced precision to her jacket pocket, withdrawing something small wrapped in deep purple velvet. The movement lasted perhaps 5 seconds, but I saw everything: how she glanced at me first, how she positioned her body to block my view, how she slipped the velvet package deep into the bottom drawer where I kept Patricia's most valuable pieces. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face neutral and continued sorting papers as if I'd noticed nothing. Melissa pulled her hand back and wiped her palms on her jeans, a gesture that spoke more of erasing evidence than cleaning. "Actually, I should let you work," she said quickly, already moving toward the door. "Derek and I have errands to run. See you at dinner tomorrow?" "Of course, sweetheart. Drive safely." I watched through the window as she practically jogged to her car, her husband Derek waiting in the passenger seat. Even from a distance, I could see him lean toward her, questioning, and her frantic nodding in response. The house fell silent except for the ticking of Patricia's grandmother clock in the hallway. I stared at my desk drawer as if it had transformed into something dangerous. Whatever Melissa had hidden there, she clearly didn't want me to find it immediately, but she expected me to discover it eventually. The contradiction made no sense unless she wanted me to find it only when it was too late to do anything about it. My mind raced back through recent months. Melissa's increasing financial stress, the way she and Derek had been pressing me to advance her inheritance, the strange questions about my insurance policies and estate planning, signs I'd attributed to grief and Derek's questionable business ventures, signs I'd explained away because she was my daughter, my only child, and I loved her. But 35 years investigating financial fraud had taught me that love can blind you to patterns that would be obvious in any other context. And the pattern here was becoming impossible to ignore. I couldn't delay any longer. Whatever Melissa had placed in my desk drawer was eating at me like acid. I approached the antique mahogany desk that had belonged to Patricia's father, and each step felt heavier than the last. The brass pulls gleamed in the morning light as I gripped the bottom drawer handle. The drawer slid open with the familiar whisper of wood on wood. There, nestled beneath the leather jewelry boxes I'd been organizing, lay the velvet-wrapped package Melissa had so carefully placed. My hands weren't quite steady as I lifted it. The velvet fell away to reveal a Tiffany & Co. box I'd never seen before. Inside lay an exquisite diamond necklace, the centerpiece of Patricia's collection, a 3-carat pendant, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. But something was wrong, very wrong. I carried the box to my desk lamp and examined the piece more closely. The setting looked right. The weight felt correct. But as an accountant who'd verified countless insurance claims, I knew how to spot details others missed. The hallmark was slightly off. The clasp mechanism wasn't quite right. This wasn't Patricia's necklace. It was a replica, a good one, probably worth $1,500, but nowhere near the $90,000 original. My legs gave out and I sank into my desk chair. The implications crashed over me like a wave. Someone had stolen Patricia's original necklace and replaced it with this copy. And Melissa had just planted it here, in my office, in my desk. But why would she return even a fake unless the realization hit me like a physical blow? This wasn't about returning anything. This was about planting evidence. Melissa wanted me to have this replica because when the theft was discovered, I would be holding proof of my guilt. The insurance company would investigate, find the fake in my possession, and assume I'd stolen the original to sell it while collecting the insurance money. I thought back to yesterday evening's uncomfortable dinner. Melissa had been unusually quiet while Derek dominated the conversation with his latest investment scheme. Something about cryptocurrency and quick returns that sounded like every other get-rich-quick scheme he'd fallen for. "Dad, we need to talk about something serious," Melissa had finally said, her voice tight with stress. "We're in financial trouble. Real trouble. We need $75,000. The number had struck me like a slap. "Melissa, that's more than half of what I have liquid in my retirement accounts. What kind of trouble requires that much money?" Derek's jaw had clenched, and I'd seen something flash across his face. Anger, maybe, or desperate calculation. "The investment I told you about, the crypto mining opportunity, it didn't work out the way we expected. We borrowed money against our house to get in on the ground floor, and now the lender is threatening foreclosure." "You mortgaged your house for a cryptocurrency scheme?" I'd tried to keep the judgment out of my voice but failed. "Derek, you work in sales. Melissa, you're a marketing coordinator. How did the bank even approve such a risky—" "We didn't go through a bank," Melissa had interrupted, and suddenly she wouldn't meet my eyes. "We went through a private lender, someone Derek knew. The interest rate is high." "How high?" 23%, Derek had muttered. I'd felt my blood pressure rising. "That's loan shark territory. Melissa, this is predatory lending. You need to. We need the money, Dad." Melissa's voice had cracked. "Please. They're going to take our house. We'll lose everything." I'd looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and seen the dark circles under her eyes, the way her clothes hung looser than they had a month ago, the tremor in her hands as she reached for her water glass. Something was desperately wrong, but throwing money at a situation this toxic would only delay the inevitable. "I'll help you find a consumer debt counselor," I'd said carefully. "We can look at legitimate refinancing options. Maybe even—" "Forget it." Derek had stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood. "I told you he wouldn't understand, Melissa. Let's go." Melissa had followed him out without another word, and I'd sat alone at the dinner table, surrounded by uneaten food, wondering when I'd lost my daughter to this man's influence. Now, 12 hours later, as I held this fake necklace in my hands, I understood. When I'd refused to hand over the money, Melissa and Derek had moved to Plan B. And Plan B involved framing me for insurance fraud to get access to my assets while I sat in prison. I grabbed my phone and pulled up my insurance agent's website, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. There, in my recent messages, was an email from 3 days ago. I'd somehow missed an email, sent from my account, updating the jewelry appraisal and increasing the coverage on Patricia's necklace from $90,000 to $140,000. I never sent that email, but someone with access to my home office and computer could have. My mind raced through the timeline. 2 weeks ago, Melissa had visited alone while Derek was supposedly on a business trip. She'd asked to use my office to prepare a work presentation. I'd left her there for over an hour while I ran errands. She'd had full access to my computer, my passwords written in my desk planner like an old fool who never learned proper digital security, everything she needed. The increased coverage would make the theft more lucrative. The fake necklace in my possession would make me the obvious suspect. And with me arrested and likely convicted, Melissa would inherit everything: the house, the investments, the life insurance, all of it while I spent my remaining years in prison. I heard Patricia's voice in my memory from her last days in hospice. "Promise me you'll take care of Melissa," she'd whispered. "Without me, she'll need you more than ever. Derek worries me, but she loves him, Be patient with them both. Patient. I'd been patient for 18 months while Derek's schemes drained their savings. Patient while Melissa made excuses for his failures. Patient while they transformed from the hopeful young couple we'd celebrated at their wedding into desperate people I barely recognized. But patience had its limits, and those limits stopped at self-preservation. I carefully rewrapped the fake necklace and placed it back exactly where Melissa had hidden it. Then I grabbed my phone and did what any good accountant does when facing fraud. I began documenting everything. First, I checked the security camera footage. I'd installed cameras around the house after Patricia died, mainly to monitor the property while I traveled to visit old colleagues. The office camera was hidden in a bookshelf, something I'd never mentioned to anyone. I pulled up the footage from this morning and watched Melissa's deception unfold in clear digital video. Her nervousness, the glances at the door, the swift movement of planting the velvet package, the guilty wipe of her hands. I saved the video to 3 different locations: my computer, an external drive, and a secure cloud service. Next, I went through my computer's history. There it was, the insurance email modification sent at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday 2 weeks ago. The timestamp matched perfectly with when Melissa had been alone in my office. I screenshotted everything. Then I began searching through Melissa and Derek's financial situation. As her father and the person who'd co-signed their first car loan, I still had access to some of their accounts, access they'd apparently forgotten about. What I found made my stomach turn. Derek had lost his sales job 4 months ago and never told us. The cryptocurrency investment had been the last of 6 failed schemes in 2 years. They'd borrowed $85,000 from a private lending company based in Edmonton, and the terms were far worse than Derek had admitted. 42% interest, compounding monthly. The first missed payment would trigger foreclosure proceedings, and they'd already missed 2 payments. But what stopped me cold was the insurance claim I found in Melissa's email drafts. She'd already written it, prepared and ready to send. I discovered my mother's necklace missing from my father's home office during a family visit. As her only heir, I'm devastated that this priceless family heirloom has been stolen, possibly by my father for financial gain. I'm filing this claim to recover the piece's value from the estate before it's lost forever. The date on the draft was tomorrow, Sunday, the day we were supposed to have dinner together. I felt something break inside me then, not my heart exactly, but some fundamental belief about family and love and the bonds that were supposed to be unbreakable. My daughter wasn't just willing to frame me. She'd planned it meticulously, calculated every step, prepared to watch me get arrested and charged and convicted, while she and Derek walked away with my life savings. I thought about calling her, trying to reason with her one more time, but I remembered that email draft, those cold, calculated words about my financial gain, and I knew there was no reasoning with someone who'd already decided to sacrifice her father for money. I thought about calling the police myself, showing them the evidence, exposing the scheme before it could unfold. But that would only protect me. It wouldn't teach the lesson that needed teaching. No, if Melissa and Derek wanted to play this game, I would show them that their target wasn't the helpless old man they thought they were manipulating. I'd spent 35 years following money trails, catching fraudsters, and building cases that sent white-collar criminals to prison. If my own daughter was going to treat me like a mark, she was about to learn that some people are far more dangerous than they appear. The fake necklace sat in my desk drawer like a loaded weapon pointed at my future. I had perhaps 24 hours before Melissa triggered her plan. Time to make sure that weapon was pointed in a different direction. I picked up my phone and made the first of several very important calls. Melissa and Derek arrived for Sunday dinner at exactly 6 o'clock, just as we'd planned. I watched through the front window as they parked, as Derek checked his phone one final time before they approached the door, as Melissa smoothed her hair and pasted on that too bright smile. I opened the door before they could knock. Right on time. Come in, come in. Something smells amazing, Dad, Melissa said, and I almost believed the warmth in her voice. Almost. Just pot roast, your mother's recipe. Derek, can I get you something to drink? Beer would be great, thanks. As I moved to the kitchen, I heard them whispering in the foyer. I couldn't make out the words, but Derek's urgent tone carried clearly. I returned with drinks and gestured them toward the dining room. Dinner proceeded with painful normalcy. We talked about the weather, about Melissa's work, about the Flames' disappointing season. All the while, I watched my daughter avoid looking toward my office, watched Derek check his watch 3 times, watched them play their roles as concerned family, while their actual plan ticked forward. Dessert was nearly finished when Melissa made her move. "Dad, I think I left my phone in your office yesterday when I stopped by. Mind if I go grab it?" Yesterday. She hadn't been here yesterday. The lie was so casual, so practiced. "Of course, sweetheart. You know where it is." I listened to her footsteps cross the hardwood floor, heard the office door open. Derek kept talking about nothing, his voice a bit too loud, filling the space while Melissa did whatever she needed to do in my office. When she returned, her face was pale, her eyes bright, with barely concealed anxiety. "Found it. Thanks, Dad." "Good, good. More coffee?" We finished the evening with forced pleasantries, and I walked them to the door. "Drive safely. Love you, Melissa." "Love you too, Dad." The words caught in her throat, and for just a moment, I saw a flash of something that might have been guilt or regret. Then Derek's hand touched her back, and the moment passed. I watched them drive away, then returned to my office. The desk drawer was exactly as I'd left it, but I knew Melissa had opened it, had confirmed the fake necklace was still there, had verified that her trap was set. Now came the waiting. Monday morning arrived with gray skies threatening snow. I was making coffee when my phone rang at 8:47 a.m. The insurance company's fraud investigation division. "Mr. Patterson? This is Janet Williams from Sterling Insurance. I'm calling about a concerning matter regarding your wife's jewelry collection. We've received a claim suggesting possible theft, and we need to conduct an immediate investigation." "A claim? From whom?" "Your daughter, sir. She's reported that a valuable necklace from the estate is missing and may have been stolen. She's provided evidence that suggests you might be involved. We're required by law to investigate before processing any claims. Will you be home today for our investigator to conduct an interview?" My hand tightened on the phone. Melissa had filed the claim. Phase 1 of her plan was in motion. "Of course. I have nothing to hide. When should I expect them?" "Within the hour." "And Mr. Patterson?" "The Calgary police will be accompanying the investigator, given the serious nature of the allegations." "Perfect. I understand. I'll be here." I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Martin Chen, a sharp criminal defense attorney I'd worked with on several white-collar cases over the years. I explained the situation in brief, clinical terms, and Martin promised to be there within 30 minutes. Then I made one more call to Detective Sarah Morrison of the Calgary Police Fraud Division, an old contact from when I'd provided expert testimony in financial crimes cases. "Sarah, it's Graham Patterson. I need a favor, and I need you to trust me." "Graham? What's wrong?" "My daughter is trying to frame me for insurance fraud. The police are coming to my house in about 45 minutes, and I need you to make sure the right people are asking the right questions." There was a pause. "That's a serious accusation, Graham. I have evidence, video, emails, financial records, everything. But I need you to witness this properly. Make sure the investigation goes where it needs to go." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm on my way. Don't let anyone in until I get there." At 9:42 a.m., 3 vehicles pulled into my driveway: the insurance investigator, 2 patrol officers, and Detective Morrison. Martin Chen arrived moments later. We gathered in my living room, and I could see the lead patrol officer, Constable Davis, sizing me up, a 64-year-old man, alone in his house, possibly a thief who'd stolen from his own wife's estate. "Mr. Patterson," the insurance investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda Cole, began, "we're investigating a report that a valuable diamond necklace from your late wife's estate has been stolen. Your daughter claims she discovered the original necklace missing during a recent visit and has concerns about its whereabouts. She's suggested that you might have taken it." "Suggested?" I kept my voice level. "Or accused?" Brenda's expression didn't change. "She's provided evidence of increased insurance coverage that she says you filed without her knowledge as the heir, and she believes the necklace may be in your possession for fraudulent purposes. We need to search your home, specifically your office, with your permission." Martin started to object, but I held up a hand. "You have my full permission. Please, search anywhere you'd like. I'll even show you exactly where to look." That got their attention. Constable Davis exchanged a glance with his partner. Detective Morrison's expression remained carefully neutral, but I saw the question in her eyes. I led them to my office, to my desk, to the bottom drawer. "Open it," I said. You'll find a velvet-wrapped jewelry box. Brenda pulled on latex gloves and carefully removed the package, opened it, and held up the necklace. It caught the light beautifully. Is this the necklace in question? That, I said clearly, is a fake. A replica worth perhaps $1,500. My wife's original necklace is currently in a safety deposit box at my bank, where I placed it 6 weeks ago for safekeeping. I have the receipt and the bank's verification. The room went very quiet. I don't understand, Brenda said slowly. If the original is in a safety deposit box, what is this doing in your desk? That's an excellent question. I turned to Detective Morrison. Sarah, do you remember my security camera system? The one you testified about in the Morrison embezzlement case? The hidden cameras that caught everything? The very same. I have footage from Saturday morning showing exactly how that fake necklace ended up in my desk. I moved to my computer and pulled up the video. I think you'll all want to see this. We watched in silence as Melissa appeared on screen, as her nervous behavior played out in high definition, as her hand slipped the velvet package into my drawer with practiced precision. That's my daughter, I said, my voice steady despite the pain crushing my chest. Melissa Patterson Hartley. She planted that fake in my desk on Saturday morning. I didn't know about it at the time, but I started investigating after noticing her suspicious behavior. I pulled up the next set of documents, the insurance modification email sent from my computer while Melissa had access, the timestamps that proved I was out of the house at the time, her email drafts with the prepared insurance claim. She needed me out of the way, I continued. She and her husband Derek are in severe financial trouble, $85,000 in private loans at 42% interest, facing foreclosure. They asked me for $75,000 last week. I refused. So they decided to frame me for stealing an insurance fraud. If I went to prison, Melissa would inherit my estate and solve their financial problems. Constable Davis looked like he'd been punched. Your own daughter? My own daughter, I confirmed, with full planning and premeditation. Detective Morrison, you'll find all the financial records here, their debt situation, the timeline of events, everything. I've documented it all. Brenda Cole was staring at the screen where Melissa's image was frozen mid-deception. This changes everything. We're not investigating you, Mr. Patterson. We're investigating her. This is attempted fraud, false reporting, conspiracy, and I want to press charges, I said firmly. All of them. Detective Morrison was already on her phone, presumably calling for backup and warrants. Martin Chen looked at me with something like professional admiration. You built the entire case yourself. 35 years as a forensic accountant, I said. I know how to follow the evidence. What happened next unfolded with the grim efficiency of justice in motion. Detective Morrison and her team went to Melissa and Derek's house in Forest Lawn with a warrant. I didn't go. I couldn't bear to see her face when she realized what had happened. Martin called me 3 hours later with the details. Melissa had answered the door in her pajamas, clearly not expecting visitors, still believing her plan was proceeding smoothly. When they told her she was being arrested for fraud and conspiracy, she'd apparently collapsed, sobbing about how I'd trapped her, how she'd had no choice, how Derek had convinced her it was the only way. Derek tried to run. He made it as far as the back fence before 2 officers brought him down. They found $17,000 in cash, hidden in their garage money they'd already received by pawning Patricia's real necklace, which they'd apparently stolen during one of their visits months ago and replaced with the fake. The real necklace was long gone, sold to a private collector in Vancouver, but the pawn receipts told the whole story. The preliminary hearing was 3 weeks later. I sat in the gallery and watched my daughter, dressed in county jail orange, as the Crown prosecutor laid out the case. Theft over $5,000, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, making false statements to police. Each charge carried its own penalty, and together they painted the picture of someone who'd crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Melissa's lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, coercion by her husband, desperate circumstances, but the video footage and email evidence made her active participation undeniable. She hadn't been coerced, she'd been a willing participant in every stage of the scheme. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, Melissa stood shakily. I want to apologize to my father. Her voice was barely audible. I was desperate, and I made terrible choices. I never wanted it to go this far. I hoped he'd just give us the money. And when he didn't, Derek said this was the only way. And I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I sat in the gallery, my hands folded in my lap, and said nothing. The apology felt performative, aimed more at the judge than at me. If she were truly sorry, truly remorseful, she would have stopped at any point before planting that necklace. She would have found another way. But she'd been willing to watch me go to prison for her convenience. The judge was not moved. Mrs. Hartley, you didn't just make poor choices. You orchestrated a complex fraud designed to destroy your own father's life and freedom. You stole from him, you lied to authorities, and you showed calculated malice in every step. The court finds this behavior particularly egregious given the trust relationship involved. Melissa was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Derek got 6 years, as the prosecutors proved he'd masterminded the scheme and had a history of financial fraud in other provinces. As the bailiffs led them away, Melissa turned back one last time, her eyes finding mine. I saw her mouth the words, "I'm sorry," again. I stood and walked out of the courtroom without acknowledging her. The legal fallout took months to resolve. The insurance company apologized profusely and paid out for the stolen original necklace, $90,000, that I immediately put into a trust for Melissa and Derek's 2 young children, my grandchildren, who were now living with Derek's parents in Ontario. The kids had done nothing wrong, and they deserved a future that their parents' choices hadn't stolen from them. The house felt different after everything too large, too full of memories that had been poisoned by betrayal. Patricia's presence lingered in every room, but now it was mixed with images of Melissa moving through these spaces while planning my destruction. 6 months after the sentencing, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I put the house on the market. Martin Chen, who'd become not just my lawyer but something approaching a friend through this ordeal, asked me if I was sure. "This is your home, Graham. Patricia's home. Are you certain?" "Patricia is gone," I said. "And the daughter we raised together turned into someone I don't recognize. It's time for something new." The house sold in 2 weeks. Calgary's market remained strong despite the broader economic concerns. After paying off the remaining mortgage and settling all accounts, I walked away with enough to buy a smaller place outright and still maintain my retirement savings. I found a modern condo in Inglewood, overlooking the Bow River, with floor-to-ceiling windows that filled every room with light. It was the opposite of the traditional home. Patricia and I had shared all clean lines and open spaces, forward-looking instead of rooted in the past. I furnished it simply: a comfortable chair for reading, a small desk for the occasional consulting work I still took on, and a few carefully chosen pieces: Patricia's grandmother clock, some photographs from better times, my collection of fountain pens that had been my one indulgence over the years. Detective Morrison stopped by a month after I'd moved in, bringing a bottle of decent scotch as a housewarming gift. We stood on my balcony, watching the river flow beneath us, the city lights reflecting on the water. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "Worse than I'd hoped." "Have you talked to her?" Melissa had written twice from prison. Both letters sat unopened in my desk drawer, next to the fake necklace the police had eventually returned to me as my property. I kept it as a reminder, not of Melissa's betrayal exactly, but of the price of blind trust. "No," I said, "and I don't plan to." Sarah sipped her whiskey. "That's your right. But I've seen a lot of families torn apart by crime, Graham. The ones who heal are the ones who eventually find some way to talk." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm not looking to heal that wound. Some things, once broken, shouldn't be repaired. They should be acknowledged as broken and then left behind." That's remarkably unforgiving coming from someone who spent decades analyzing human behavior and understanding why people make terrible choices. "I understood Melissa's choices perfectly," I said. "That's exactly why I can't forgive them. She knew what she was doing. She calculated the costs and decided I was expendable. That's not a moment of weakness or a mistake made under pressure. That's character revealed." We stood in comfortable silence for a while, 2 people who'd seen enough of human nature to know that some questions don't have satisfying answers. Sarah left around midnight, and I stood alone on my balcony, the October wind carrying the smell of the river and the distant sound of train horns. The city spread out below me, thousands of windows lit with thousands of lives, each person carrying their own burdens and betrayals and small triumphs. I thought about Patricia and what she would say if she could see how things had ended. She'd believed so strongly in family, in forgiveness, in the power of love to overcome anything. But she'd never imagined that our daughter would be capable of such calculated cruelty. Her final request had been for me to take care of Melissa, But Patricia had never considered that taking care of Melissa might mean protecting myself from her. The trust fund I'd set up for the grandchildren would give them opportunities their parents' choices had jeopardized. That was the best legacy I could offer, not enabling destructive behavior, but creating a foundation for the next generation to build something better. I kept 3 things from my old life: documentation of everything in a safety deposit box, a lawyer on retainer, and the security system expanded to my new home. Trust, I'd learned, was a luxury I could no longer afford freely. Some people earn it, some people lose it, and some people weaponize it. Knowing which is the difference between wisdom and victimhood. 1 year after Melissa's sentencing, the Crown prosecutor called to inform me that Melissa was eligible for early parole if she could demonstrate rehabilitation and had a stable support system. They wanted to know if I would be willing to speak on her behalf or provide housing and support for her release. I thought about it for exactly as long as it took me to form the word no. "Mr. Patterson," the prosecutor said carefully, "I understand your position, but the parole board does consider family support as a significant factor in successful reintegration. Your statement could make the difference between approval and denial." "Then she'll be denied," I said. "My daughter made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. She chose to prioritize money over family, temporary relief over permanent relationships, and her own comfort over my freedom. Those choices revealed who she truly is, and I'm not obligated to pretend otherwise." Melissa served her full sentence. I heard through Derek's parents that she was released on a cold March morning, 3.5 years after her arrest, having earned some time off for good behavior. She moved to Edmonton to start over, working at a call center, living in a small apartment, attending court-mandated financial counseling. She never tried to contact me again after those first 2 letters went unanswered. Perhaps she understood that some bridges, once burned, scatter ashes too far to ever gather back together. I think about her sometimes, late at night when the river sounds drift through my open balcony door. I wonder if she ever truly understood what she'd tried to do, if she grasps the enormity of being willing to send your own father to prison for money. I wonder if Derek's parents tell my grandchildren stories about me, or if I've become a cautionary tale, the grandfather who chose justice over family, principle over forgiveness. But I sleep well at night. My conscience is clear. I didn't abandon my daughter. She abandoned herself to greed and desperation. I didn't destroy our relationship. I simply refused to let her destroy me. The path to peace isn't always found through forgiveness. Sometimes it's found through boundaries, through clear-eyed recognition of what people are capable of, through the courage to say no further when someone you love tries to use that love as a weapon. Patricia used to say that family was everything. And she was right, but she never specified what we should do when family becomes the very thing trying to destroy everything else. The answer, I learned, is to choose survival. Choose self-preservation. Choose the future over the past, even when the past wears a familiar face and calls you dad. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted completely, share your experience in the comments below. How did you find the strength to protect yourself? How did you navigate the space between love and self-preservation? Subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, justice, and the courage to set boundaries, even when it breaks your heart. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't sacrifice, it's refusing to be destroyed by those who would use your love against you. Remember, God created families to foster growth, not to harbor destruction. When someone you love becomes someone who threatens your survival, choosing yourself isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. And wisdom, however painful, is always better than the alternative. The sun sets over the Bow River, painting the water in shades of gold and amber. My small condo, with its clean lines and forward-looking spaces, feels more like home every day. The past still visits sometimes, in quiet moments and unexpected memories, but it no longer owns me. I am 65 years old. I have enough money to live comfortably, a network of professional colleagues who respect my work, and the hard-won knowledge that survival sometimes means walking away from the very people you'd hope to walk beside forever. It's not the ending I wanted, but it's the ending I chose, and in that choice lies a kind of freedom that forgiveness never could have given me.